Father worked here in the 1890s in the phosphate mines. He was an engineer and he seems to be practically managing the mine, but I think he may have come with the equipment because the little train and the rails were all from Leeds in England. He worked here, he brought his wife here on a sailing ship called the Koh-i-Noor, belonging to a great uncle of mine. His children were born here, my father included, but sad to tell, my grandmother died here in 1896, and also sad to say, the Koh-i-Noor was wrecked here in 1906. All this, as you see, is nearly 100 years ago, and my grandfather left here in 1911, and I have come back on a trip into the past to find out what I can about the phosphate mines, and I have visited it. I have been to the library. I have some wonderful records. I have writing in my grandfather's own handwriting about the mines. The pastor was able to find my grandmother's grave in the Protestant cemetery. It is a beautiful white marble gravestone to Ada Mary Walker. It looks as though she only died yesterday. It is such a beautiful tombstone. And the archives have even found me a report by your governor about the sinking of the Koh-i-Noor in San Francisco Bay. And I find it wonderful. Everyone has been so helpful. I've been to the libraries, I have been to the archives, and I have been up to the phosphate mines and I have looked down them. It's been wonderful.
Miss Gill, you have talked about the Koh-i-Noor. That's the name of the ship?
Yes, it's Kohinoor. It's a very strange name. She was a barkentine, which is a sailing vessel. I think in those days little sailing vessels used to come to pick up the phosphate, but there's a sad story about how the tug wasn't operational. She came to pick up and she loaded up and she couldn't get out. A gale came up and she was driven back against the rocks and she sank. I haven't found anybody who's actually seen the wreck. I would almost like to go diving and look for the wreck, but it's probably destroyed many years ago. But it was a beautiful sailing boat, and my grandfather and his family went to and fro to Cornwall in England and to Aruba on this sailing boat, the Koh-i-Noor, which was owned by my great uncle.
She says it's been a journey of adventure and discovery. With the help of old records and photographs, Dorothy Gill-Carey has pieced together her family's history. She went back more than 100 years to a time when her grandfather, Yorkshire-born engineer George Walker, mined phosphate on Aruba, an island lying off the coast of Venezuela in South America.
I suppose old age really prompted me to look back, and I started thinking about my own grandfather, and that my father and his brothers and one sister were all born in Aruba, and most people have never heard of Aruba, and it's a small island, but it's the most westerly island in the Caribbean. Dutch West Indies, they usually call it. So my father was born in the Dutch West Indies. It belongs to Holland.
Dorothy has just returned from Aruba, where she found the grave of her grandmother, who died while giving birth to her fourth child. At the turn of the century, the family, including Dorothy's father, Bertie, sailed to Polruan on a Cornish-built cargo ship, the Koh-i-Noor.
They were so kind in Aruba. I used to say, well, you know, I could claim to be Aruban, you know, my father was born here. Oh, they were quite pleased to hear about everything from so long ago out there, and oh, it's been a wonderful experience.
Dorothy's work is not quite over. It seems there are still a few mysteries to unravel. Steve Jennings in St Agnes for West Country.